finally releasing as a full game, or at least a complete game. What does a full game mean these days anyway? What is a completed game? Well, it's officially out of its early access. As of November the 18th, Tripwire Interactive has finally released Killing Floor 2, which is now out on the PC and PlayStation 4. Killing Floor 2 is a wave-based survival horde mode sort of game, following the vein of Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead 2, and other similar titles. The premise is extremely simple at its core. There are Zeds, not zombies, okay? They're not zombies. Don't call them zombies. I don't care if you call them zombies. They're Zeds. Zeds are coming, shoot them in your face, hit them with your assault shovel, do whatever you will with the classes and the weapons at hand, and then beat the boss at the end, win the game. Bob's your uncle. This is one of the problems that a lot of these games tend to have, the simplicity of what they are at the core. They have a repetitious nature, so it's really hard for the really good games of this type to stand out from the pack. One of the most common complaints about these games is that it just gets boring doing the same thing over and over. Does Killing Floor 2 address these concerns, or is there something different about the way Killing Floor 2 approaches this genre of games that really make it stand out from the rest? Well, I believe it does. Developed by Tripwire Interactive, this is an indie game. Tripwire Interactive you may recognize from Killing Floor 1, obviously, Red Orchestra 2, Rising Storm. Those are the most notable games that they've made. The first Killing Floor 1 game was fantastic. It seems dated now. I can't even run it at 1440p, for instance. But it's a cult hit, a classic. It's like the Evil Dead. The original, not the new one. Gore just doesn't do it for me. I'm kind of squeamish like that, which is weird. I heard the series with Bruce Campbell's really good. Back to the game. Killing Floor 1 was supported far after its initial release, with DLCs and weapon packs and this and that and seasonal events, blah blah blah. So, with Tripwire planning to do the exact same thing with this game, I think you should consider the value that it adds to the proposition. It's on sale right now, autumn sale. Don't come to me in 5 weeks down the road and say, oh, you're lying, it's not on sale. If you do that, you're dumb. But as for Killing Floor 2, I currently have 410 hours in this game. I was a fairly early adopter when it was on early access, and it takes me a lot to kind of throw my money in with an early access game, because unlike pre-ordering, at least I get something when I spend my money. Plus, with how good Killing Floor 1 was and how well it was supported, I felt like they really were going to live up to their expectations, and I think they have with Killing Floor 2. It's rated positively on Steam, 83% as of today, so we'll see how it does in the future. Killing Floor 2 does a number of things particularly well. Weapon handling. Now, the game is repetitive by its nature. It's horde-based, you have guns, you shoot bad things coming to bite your face. There's not a lot of variety here. However, it's the immense enjoyment that you get from doing the same thing over and over, because in this case, it's very skill-based. It's not like a Call of Duty point and shoot. The weapon handling that's built into Killing Floor, it does take some getting used to. It's not like any other games. It's definitely an improvement over the first Killing Floor's excellent weapon handling. Rifles have this repetitious sort of bounce to them in the way that they recoil when you shoot them. It oddly, in a way, reminds me of real-life rifles, which I shoot because I live in Arkansas, and it's practically, that's what you do if you're not, you shoot guns. So it's nice to see a game where I can go, yeah, that's kind of what guns really do in real life. Shooting guns in video games is a repetitious thing, but in Killing Floor 2 it never ceases to be enjoyable. You can't just pick up guns and be expert with them. You have to practice a little bit. You kind of have to learn the recoil. You kind of have to learn how to aim everything to keep it going. And it's not just the way that the gun itself handles. It's the way that enemies respond to being shot. Killing Floor 2 is all about giving you excellent feedback when you have shots that connect. No doubt you've been seeing that in this game, especially with weapons like the double-barreled shotgun, which send enemies flying, oftentimes in hordes. When you shoot things in this game, it feels good. It feels satisfying. When limbs go flying, when shells tear zombies to pieces, when heads blow off, when arms are eviscerated from their accompanying torsos. you feel like you're doing some real damage to these genetically modified monstrosities. Now, because I'm an FPS whore, pretty much all of the gameplay that you're seeing is things bumped down to some of their lowest settings. If you turn things up very high, then guts fly off and there are more body parts and they fly into tiny pieces, and it's really a chaotic show of how impressive giblets can be in games. You know, in fact, let me go ahead and get some gameplay real quick of everything set to Ultra, and we'll see how things look. Okay, set everything to Ultra, now let's go. Got myself my little icy arena. It's a great map to run around, solo things if you can, but you can already see the dramatic graphical improvements once you pump everything up to Ultra. One of the benefits of PC, you want it pretty, you want it smooth? It's your choice. In any event, as you sit there and watch this bloody awful carnage transpire before you, I will finish my thoughts. Blasting enemies with a variety of different weapons, no two feel the same. That is a reload bug, by the way. I'm not that good with my hands. Blasting enemies with powerful revolvers will send them flying. Slicing enemies to pieces with swords will chop them to little bits. Grenades, RPGs, rockets, they'll send enemies flying in an explosion of body parts and innards. Melee combat is incredibly satisfying with directional attacks that can be used against single enemies or in crowds. You can stab, you can slice this way, that way, you can parry. All in all, you get a sense of satisfaction from the way that you fight your enemies with a variety of weapons you have at your disposal. But as we talk about the different types of weapons, be they assault rifles, submachine guns, shotguns, melee implements, the different types of grenades you can use, flamethrowers, we have to talk about the classes in this game and the leveling up. You have the Berserker, who uses melee weapons, mostly. You got the Commando, who uses assault rifles. Support uses shotguns. Field Medic heals people with his SMGs, and, well, he's kind of got a mixed bag of stuff. Firebug has, well, fire-based weapons. Demolition uses explosives. Gunslinger uses pistols. The Sharpshooter uses longer-ranged weapons. The Survivalist is sort of a mix of everything, with an interesting set of abilities that complement an overall jack-of-all-trades nature. You got the SWAT guy, you've got the SWAT. The SWAT guy, he uses SMGs, he shoots people. The classes work well together. Maybe not in the most direct roles, but in the different ways that they can combat enemies. For instance, Commandos are generally better at taking out all the trash Zeds, the lower level Zeds, or the medium tier ones, and not as good at taking out the big guys like the two flesh pounds you are watching me fight right now, or the Skrakes, the ones with the chainsaws. Firebugs, for instance, are good for area of effect damage, locking down choke points with a continuous stream of flame. You have the SWAT guy, which is great for crowd control, because his SMGs get boosts to their magazine capacity. Obviously, the Field Medic heals people and gives them buffs with the healing darts, which thank goodness have a level of auto-aim to them. Ana players in Overwatch know what I'm talking about. It's like, so fucking stand still, I'm trying to heal you, piece of shit. The way that these perks combine, the way that teams can prioritize targets and lock down areas and concentrate their fire in certain directions, from a team aspect, this is vital. But from a simple gameplay aspect, it's very important for the longevity of the game and for you as a player because the classes feel immensely different. Obviously, using a sharpshooter and playing as a berserker will feel different, and using SMGs and using shotguns feels different, and the weapons themselves give you different levels of feedback in an enjoyable way that makes you constantly keep coming back to the game itself. However, classes get better over time as you kill Zeds and perform actions that give you more experience. You don't see it popping up now in this gameplay because I'm already max rank for the Berserker and the Gunslinger that you've been seeing, so I don't get experience for them. This ties directly with how Killing Floor 2 handles the difficulty settings of games, which a lot of games do rather poorly, but we'll get to that in just a moment. You start off, of course, at level 0, and you go up to level 25. It's a little bit of a grind, but it's enjoyable all the way, which I can't say for most games. You get passive bonuses as you level up. For instance, the commando gets a perk weapon damage and a Z time extension and a reload speed increase every, such and such levels. So you get progressively better over time as you level up, but every 5 levels you get to choose between 2 perk talents that you have. And sometimes the choices can be win-win, making you really decide what you find the most attractive. For instance, once you reach level 5 as a commando, you can choose between reloading faster or having more bullets in your magazine. There's no wrong choice, it's just whether or not you find one more useful than the other. It's also important to note that this isn't just a sped up reload. You actually have a different animation for tactical reloads, which is your fast reload. It looks like you're reloading faster. It looks like you know what you're actually doing. You'll change magazines in a different fashion to make things go quicker. A good touch of detail that this game has. Every 5 levels, as I said, you get to have a new perk talent, and it goes 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, obviously. For instance, at level 20 as Commando, you can increase the damage of your perk weapons by 25% and reduce the recoil by 50%, which is a massive bonus. Or you can increase the magazine capacity of your weapons by 100%. So like I said, once again, there's no wrong choice here. As you level up, as you get more perks, as you get better at the game itself, you progress through the levels of difficulty. Maybe you start at normal or hard, and then you move up to suicidal, which is what I'm playing now, or hell on earth, which is the toughest difficulty. This is how you keep the game challenging and never feel overpowered. Obviously, if you're very good at the game and you go into the game and it's easy, not only will your numbers be better, as in you'll just do so much damage it's easy to take out Zeds at lower difficulties, but Zeds don't perform and act and move about with the same mannerisms they do at higher difficulties. So let me show you an example. If you start a game and you set it to normal, which is the lowest difficulty it goes to. Did I say easy earlier? I don't know. But if you start out on normal, which is the lowest difficulty, the Zeds will walk very slowly. There won't be very many as you start off. If you just walk away from them, they can't catch you. They're not high level. They're the weakest of the weakest Zeds. There's a bloat right there. Those are annoying. More on them later. But you can easily just pick them off. No problems whatsoever. And not only are they weak, and they move slowly, but if they damage you, it's very low damage. So yeah, I can just casually let them whack me upside the head with their fists. Doesn't matter. I have an AR-15. All's good. It's not an AR-15, Rex. But if you set the difficulty to Hell on Earth, things get a little bit different. Not only are there more, significantly more, they move faster, they are higher leveled enemies. I mean, these guys are sprinting actively towards you. And this is Z time, by the way, the slow motion bullet time effect. More on that later. There's more on a lot of things later I've noticed in this video. It's hard to cover everything without kind of bleeding into other subjects, but it's a lot more difficult. They do more damage to you. All in all, you have to basically play better, be better. Shoot forward, move forward, time your reloads. This is the difference between normal and Hell on Earth. But also, notice something very important. When I shoot them in the head on both difficulties, they die. One of the most fantastic aspects of this game is that it does not borrow from a common video game trope practically at this point, that higher difficulties mean more bullet-spongy enemies. In addition to that, at higher difficulty levels, you get less dodge per level. This is the case with Killing Floor 2's bigger enemies, the Skrakes and the Fleshbounds, but for the most part, if you can kill it in a headshot at one difficulty, you can kill it with a headshot on a higher difficulty. You don't have to spend more and more ammo just shooting them over and over, because bullet-spongy enemies and whittling down health bars just isn't fun. Enemies are quicker, they do more damage. There are different types of enemies that come into the game at different waves. They behave in different ways as well. So, for instance, on Suicidal, the Husks, which are the Bernie ones with a rocket launcher, they shoot rockets at you, but if they get too close, they will turn that rocket launcher into a flamethrower, and they will roast you, which does very high damage. And in addition to that, if they get very low health, they can shoot a rocket at the ground and blow themselves up to do high damage to you as well. Enemies behave differently, and they act differently at higher levels. They have different attacks, they move in different ways, they are more difficult, not just because it takes more bullets to kill them. Your 1911, for instance, always feels like it's lethal. It always feels like it's packing a punch, regardless of the difficulty. It makes you feel powerful. There are also less pickups on the map itself for you to replenish ammo and armor. So, the higher the difficulty, the more damage the Zeds do, the more of them there are, the more attacks that they will perform, the faster they move, and the less dosh you get. The potency of the weapons is another reason that you'll keep coming back to this game. It's why I still do after over 400 hours. One of the reasons as well is because the Zed types themselves, because they're not zombies, they're Zeds, is their variety. You have the little ones that just run up to you and hit you. You have the gore-fasts, which are the ones that you see here, the skinned ones with no jaw and the sword for an arm. They hit you with a sword arm thing. Pretty, yeah. Shocker. You have the husks, which shoot rockets at you. They've got flamethrowers. They blow up. Allahu Akbar. That sort of thing. The bloats, the big fat ones, they vomit all over you, which damages you over time and takes up your vision. Boom. You have the sirens. They scream and damage everything in a radius around them. Then you have the crawlers, the spider things. They're quick. I notice about the crawlers a lot of the times is that maybe by accident or design, the way that they behave in the game, or the way they interact with you, is that oftentimes when you're ADSing towards enemies at their heads, you'll get attacked by them because your gun is covering up the ground, and you can't see them, something you don't really notice in games without that kind of enemy. Then you have the two big ones. You have the Skrakes, which are the chainsaw-wielding guys, which, if they take enough damage, will start to charge you. And then you have the Flesh Pounds, which are the strongest, notwithstanding the bosses. And they run up to you and they pummel you, and they do a lot of damage. And you have to focus on these big enemies, the Skrakes and the Flesh Pounds, if you want to survive the rounds, because they're very tough, and they can take a lot of damage. You have to work as a team to eliminate and prioritize them, as compared to the weaker things. The boss fights, which are at the end of every wave, every groups of waves, the end of the game, they're not bad, they're not great, they're alright. There are two bosses in the game, and they're both, well, functional in terms of bosses. You beat him, you win the round. Maybe you'll get goodies, maybe not. Doesn't really matter. It's all cosmetic anyway. There's not too many enemies, there's not too few enemies, but they perform a variety of tasks in order to kill you. It does keep the game somewhat fresh. Some are stronger than others, some are weaker than others. It's a fairly decent variety in the enemies. I talked earlier for a moment about Zed time, and what Zed time is, it's basically slow-mo, it's bullet time. Every class, when they get to level 25, can choose a Zed time related perk or attribute. So when Zed time activates, they can do something or something happens. For instance, if you're a level 25 SWAT, you get one of the better ones in the game, which is your bullets have infinite ammo, and, well, while Zed time's firing at least, and they fire at near real-time speed. Obviously, this is incredibly useful. Berserkers have the ability to attack and move in almost real time, another extremely useful one. Commandos can reload in real time. There's a lot of things like that, which just make your character stronger. Commandos, by the way, can extend Zed time if they continually get kills in Zed time. The map you're looking at now is a remastered, modernized version of an old Killing Floor 1 map. And there are a lot of community maps that you'll play on as well. Some of them are very, very good. And of course, there's the official Tripwire maps as well. Maps in Killing Floor 2 are everywhere, from outside to inside, in castles, and bunkers, and catacombs, on islands. They could be anywhere. The limitations of map design is, well, it's amazing what people can think of, I'll say that. Some maps are just stupid and silly, but that's fine, because it's kind of a stupid, silly game. For instance, I once played on a map that was literally just one long-ass hallway, and the Zeds would spawn at one side, and you'd have to hold the proverbial line against them. It was very fun. Tripwire promises new maps will be out. They will add more community maps. Maps can be downloaded from the workshop. There will not be any shortage of maps in this game at all, I guarantee you that. Though favorites do pop up from time to time, and you will see some recurring. And some classes, of course, play best on different maps. Wide open maps with long sight lines are good for sharpshooters and commandos, especially if the elevation's flat and it's easier to get headshots. while claustrophobic maps are great for berserkers and supports who use melee weapons and shotguns respectively. Some of you might recognize maps from other video games, such as Doom, for instance, that are recreated to be killing floor maps. Even games from, say, Super Mario. I enjoy playing on these maps. Look, if you just take a game like this and accept that it's not meant to be super serious, and admit to yourself, yeah, I can use my rocket launcher to kill genetically modified mutant zombies in the Mushroom Kingdom and have fun, then more power to you. Just let the silliness, just let it be. This is a game that, when you take all the maps and every promise made by Tripwire and their history of supporting games like the original Killing Floor far past release, it adds a lot to the value of the game and how much money you spend on it. Tripwire said on the Steam forums under their news section, "Looking ahead into next year, our production team is sorting out the roadmap for our intended content goals, which include new maps, both our own and community-created ones, taken official, new weapons for many if not all the perks, including some old favorites, new Zeds, new boss or potentially more, and new game modes, along with a return of seasonal events from Killing Floor 1. Many of these items are in some sort of prototype or production already, one old favorite weapon and one soon-to-be new favorite are in early testing, so it is shaping up to be an exciting year ahead." This isn't a game I believe will die out quickly. It has always had people to play with online, and now that it's released, I think it'll be even more alive, especially because it will receive all these updates constantly, and most of them for free. I'm really hoping, though, that they do add cross-platform support because this game is on PC and PlayStation 4. I've mentioned this before with cross-platform games in a video I did fairly recently, but if a game is cooperative, if all the players are working together towards a common goal, and it's not competitive in nature, I think that there should definitely be a push to let people on different platforms play with one another. It's best for the game, and it's best for the gamers, because it keeps games alive, and it keeps communities going as years roll on by. Now, let's talk about the microtransactions of Killing Floor 2. Right now on the Steam Marketplace, you can go and you could buy skins and keys for USBs and cards for crates and all that stuff in a style reminiscent of Counter-Strike Go. There's nothing in this game you can buy that gives you an objective advantage over any of the other players. It's all cosmetic, which means if you don't want to partake in worrying about it, then don't. However, if you do, then there's a chance at the end of a round of being gifted with a skin or a crate that you can spend money to unlock. Most of these items are sellable on the Steam market, and I don't know how PlayStation's works. I imagine it isn't quite the same. But on Steam, if you want a skin, you can get a lot for extremely cheap. We're talking pennies. One interesting thing that I've been able to do is go to the Steam store and spend a couple dollars on tokens for very cheap skins, scrap those cheap skins to upgrade them to higher skins, and eventually end up with more value than what I put into buying the cheap skins for. Just something I've noticed. But again, nothing in this game, there's no pay-to-win function in this game. There's no weapon that you could buy with money, and there's no Steam market item that gives you any sort of advantage over anybody else. All in all, I think Killing Floor 2 is a fantastic game. It's far from perfect, but knowing them, it will be updated and they will keep supporting it as the days roll by. It has a healthy community, lots of games to play, lots of maps, excellent weapons with more on the way. Feedback you get from using weapons is great, and the way that enemies react to getting hit from those weapons is top-notch and some of the best I've ever seen in a shooter. It's lots of fun to play with friends, but it's easy to hop into a lobby and make some new... That sounds so cheesy. Anyway, you can do it. So if you're into cooperative shooters against hordes of enemies, then this game might be right up your alley. I really like this game, as you can tell, but it's not perfect. For those of you who played the first Killing Floor 1, it had this B-movie, cheeky British sort of smarm to it. It's hard to describe. It had this flavor, this kind of taste, and it's been lost in Killing Floor 2. The flavor of the original is gone, and I kind of like that in the original game. It was this obviously British sort of indie thing that I loved. Now, if you didn't play the first Killing Floor, you won't even notice, but to people who did, like me, it's sad to see it go. There also isn't really that big of a weapon variety amount. There's only about 4 weapons for each class, though they do get their own grenade types and abilities. I would like to see more, and there will be more as the game is developing. There will be more stuff added. There already has been new weapons added to the originals that were brought out. The Demolition class got an M16 with a grenade launcher attached to it. It's a useful weapon. Now, the upside to this is that the weapons do feel different. They do have different stats. They feel like different guns. They cover all the bases that there are. They're satisfying to use. There's just not a whole lot of them. But since some of them can take a while to really get proficient with, you'll have your hands full as it is. Other than that, my issues are mostly nitpicks. This has been in early access for a long time. A lot of the bugs have been ironed out and worked away. Things seem really polished. One thing I would also like to praise this game for is that it looks fantastic. I played a lot of Ultra getting some footage for this, and as you can see here, the flash of guns, the spent casings, the very accurate, realistic reloading, it all has this tint of authenticity that adds to the appeal of Killing Floor 2. There are lots of graphic options that you can set, and you can change things in the INI files as well, such as how many zombie bodies will... Sorry, I did it again, I called them zombies, they're not zombies, they're Zeds. How many Zed bodies stick around in the map. So, theoretically, you could have dozens upon dozens of Zed bodies lying around in the waves, provided your computer can handle it. And if you're on consoles, well, sorry about you guys, consoles, you can't do that. Obviously, some maps will look better than others. This one obviously is not one of the best looking maps, but it's very functional and fun to play, and it just goes to show how many of the community creations make it into the game. You can also select different characters to play as. They have no impact on gameplay. For the most part, all you'll notice is that they'll say different cheeky things, and your hands will look different. There's no actual statistical difference between DJ Scully and Tanaka and Breyer. It's also important to note with a game like this, look, if you don't like cooperative, horde-based survival shooter games, then don't buy this game. You're not gonna like it. This is one of the prime examples of the genre. Don't buy this game if you don't like the genre and tell me, oh, this game sucks. Of course it does. If you like the genre, if you're on the fence about it, well, maybe this will be the one to tilt you over to the side. With Tripwire's promise to continue to update, balance, and keep this game alive with their support, I can definitely see this game lasting for many years to come. It is a very worthy sequel to its predecessor, one that will be supported by the devs and the community alike, one that has a lot of life left in it. It's often very fast-paced and action-packed and requires a lot of skill to do well. And those are my thoughts on Killing Floor 2.